She had 14 days to save her home, and the man sent to destroy it. Emma stepped off the train at Kent Station. The platform was long and narrow, stretching under the gray sky, damp from the overnight rain. She adjusted the strap of her leather bag and picked up her medium-sized suitcase. The air smelled sharply of wet stone and iron from the tracks. She walked along the platform, observing minor changes. The benches were replaced, the signs refreshed, the paint on the station walls brighter than before. Yet the rhythm of the trains, the distant whistles, the smell of damp wood and coal triggered a sense of familiarity she had not expected. Emma had spent 10 years in London. She had mastered deadlines, meetings, client demands, long nights, and the constant pressure of the city, but it had drained her. Her energy was spent. Her mind sought something solid, something enduring. Alder Creek awaited. The farmhouse she had grown up in, the land that had been in her family for generations, was under threat of auction due to unpaid debts. She had no illusions. The auction was only 2 weeks away, and the Vanguard Group's legal reach was already tightening around the property. Her London savings were a thin shield against their momentum, but she had a singular focus: stabilize the structure, prove the farm's historical viability, and force a stay of execution on the sale. She left the station and took a taxi through the narrow village roads. Houses lined the streets with faded paint, cracked window panes, and peeling signs. The hedges were overgrown, and occasional patches of mud indicated recent rain. The taxi driver spoke briefly about the farm, the auction, and the buyers expressing interest, but Emma only nodded. She was focused entirely on what awaited her. The village looked smaller, more fragile than she remembered, but the landscape, fields rolling beyond, hedgerows dividing plots, the distant church steeple, everything grounded her to a reality she needed to reclaim. The taxi turned onto the driveway of Alder Creek. Gravel crunched under the wheels. The gates swung slowly as she pushed them open. The yard was uneven, overgrown with tall grass, weeds curling along the edges. The farmhouse itself was worn with age, missing roof tiles, sagging chimney, cracked window panes, doors with warped frames. She stepped out, the cool air brushing her face, and surveyed the property. Broken fences leaned against weathered posts. Rusted tools were scattered near the barn. The faint smell of earth mixed with decay filled the air. She approached the front door, hand on the old metal knob, and pushed. The hinges groaned. Inside, dust coated every surface. The floorboards creaked under her weight. The ceiling beams bore dark streaks of water damage. Sunlight filtered through the dirty windows, falling across the kitchen floor in uneven patterns. She walked the rooms carefully, observing every crack in the walls, peeling paint, warped floors, damaged fixtures. Emma took out her folder and began cross-referencing the property documents with the physical state of the farm. Mortgages were overdue. The auction date loomed in less than 2 weeks. Time was scarce. She had to act quickly. She made a list of urgent repairs: secure the roof, reinforce or replace beams, restore barn doors, repair fencing, assess plumbing, inspect electrical wiring, evaluate the state of the land. She drafted a plan. First, hire local contractors for urgent work. Second, obtain all necessary permits. Third, begin restoration according to historical preservation standards. She wanted Alder Creek to retain its original character while being functional for her envisioned boutique hotel and workshops. Every decision she considered was weighed against both practicality and aesthetics. She walked through the barn, measuring the doors, inspecting the beams, noting where wood was rotted or cracked. The roof needed patching. Several areas required immediate replacement to prevent further water damage. She examined the field boundaries, noting where fencing had collapsed and where gates needed reinforcement. She assessed access points for vehicles and equipment. She mentally calculated the manpower and resources required. She planned to hire local labor to involve the community and accelerate the restoration while maintaining cost efficiency. By mid-afternoon, Emma had completed a full inspection of the farmhouse and surrounding property. She called her father to update him. He sounded tense, his voice tight with anxiety about the looming auction and the accumulated debts. She reassured him, outlining the steps she had already taken and the plan for the next days. He expressed worry, but she remained firm, promising to take responsibility and protect the family legacy. After the call, She returned to inspecting details: windows, doors, floors, the roof, walls, plumbing, electrical systems. She made photographs, notes, sketches, and calculations. She prioritized repairs that would secure the property immediately, prevent further deterioration, and allow the subsequent restoration work to proceed safely. She prepared lists of materials needed: types of wood, nails, tools, paint, replacement windows, roofing tiles. She made notes of contractors she could contact, estimating costs, scheduling inspections, checking availability, ensuring that all work could proceed within the limited time frame before the auction. She also checked the legal and property documents: ownership verified, easements noted, prior agreements reviewed, obligations identified. Every detail mattered. Every action had consequences. As evening approached, Emma sat at the farmhouse kitchen table, the single overhead bulb casting a pale glow. Counters were dusty, stove unused, cupboards empty. She opened a window, letting in cold air. She observed the fields stretching beyond the farmhouse: broken fences, barren areas, potential spaces for livestock, gardens, or workshop expansions. She thought of the barn doors she would restore, the rooms she would refurbish, the historical aspects she would preserve. She organized her plan for the next day: contacting contractors, ordering materials, initiating small repairs, beginning to secure the property. Exhausted physically but mentally determined, she reviewed every note, every photograph, every observation. She was aware that her next steps would require discipline, precision, and relentless effort. Alder Creek was at a critical juncture. Failure was not an option. She resolved that she would restore the farm completely, reclaim her family's heritage, and create a foundation for the future. The next morning, Emma began her day at first light. She moved through the farmhouse systematically, starting with the roof. She inspected each tile, noting cracked and missing sections, areas where water had seeped through and darkened the beams underneath. She measured the angles, counted tiles, and sketched a detailed plan for replacement. She checked the gutters for blockages, cleared debris, and noted spots requiring reinforcement. Every action was deliberate, precise, her focus unwavering. She then proceeded to the barn. The main doors were warped and rotting at the bottom. She pushed against them, tested hinges, and made measurements for replacements. Inside, the beams were solid but dusty. She identified sections that required sanding, reinforcement, and treatment against rot. The floorboards were uneven. She marked areas needing leveling or replacement. She walked the perimeter of the property, examining fencing. Several sections had collapsed entirely, leaving gaps large enough for livestock to escape. She measured each section, made lists of materials, and mentally assigned tasks for each day. By mid-morning, Emma began calling local contractors. She explained the scope of work: roof repairs, barn reinforcement, fencing restoration, minor plumbing fixes, electrical inspections. Each call required precise negotiation: schedules, availability, pricing, materials. She noted confirmations, waiting times, and prioritized tasks based on urgency and cost. Contractors asked questions, and she answered confidently, demonstrating knowledge gained from years of project management in London. She documented each conversation meticulously, noting phone numbers, promises, potential delays. Between calls, she walked the fields, checking soil quality, drainage, and potential areas for garden beds and guest parking. She took detailed photographs, measured plots, and wrote notes in her folder, organizing sections by repair priority, resource allocation, and time estimates. Around noon, she examined the farmhouse interiors again. Kitchen counters were cleaned minimally to allow assessment of surfaces. Windows were measured, some requiring full replacement, others needing glass and frame repairs. She checked door frames, floorboards, and staircases. The staircase to the second floor creaked with every step. She noted support beams needing reinforcement. The walls showed cracks in corners and near windows. She marked each on her diagram, identifying which repairs could be temporary and which required permanent solutions. Emma also checked storage areas, making space for construction materials and tools. She considered safety measures for workers and herself. In the afternoon, Emma focused on legal documentation. She reviewed property deeds, easements, outstanding mortgages, and prior agreements with local authorities. She identified potential obstacles, such as rights of way, zoning regulations, and building codes. She prepared a timeline for obtaining permits, scheduling inspections, and ensuring all actions remained within legal boundaries. She made photocopies of critical documents, scanned them, and organized both digital and physical files. She also researched potential investors, local grants for historical preservation, and funding options for restoration. Her goal was to secure Alder Creek from auction while ensuring compliance with regulations. By evening, she walked the property again. The light was fading, and shadows stretched across the fields. She inspected the fences one last time for the day, noting weak points and broken posts. She measured spaces for temporary gates to prevent further property damage overnight. She re-entered the farmhouse, checked her lists, photographs, and notes. She planned the next day, begin minor repairs to secure the property, confirm contractor schedules, order necessary materials, and continue inspection of interiors and exteriors. She prepared dinner minimally, ate, and reviewed all plans once more. Every detail mattered. Mistakes could cost her the farm. She set alarms for early rising, knowing that every day counted. Exhaustion weighed physically, but her focus sharpened. Alder Creek would not be lost. She would fight systematically, step by step, detail by detail. By mid-morning, Emma was documenting the structural rot in the barn when a black sedan disturbed the gravel driveway. Liam stepped out, his professional attire a sharp contrast to the mud-stained yard. He didn't look like the boy who had vanished 10 years ago. He looked like the corporate instrument sent to measure the remains of her heritage. "Emma," he said quietly, eyes meeting hers. His tone was neutral, but she detected tension, a mix of caution and obligation. "I didn't expect to see you here." She took a deep breath. "I came back to handle Alder Creek. I'm aware of the auction, the debts, and the property condition. I intend to restore it." Her voice was firm, measured, controlling her sudden rush of emotion. She did not allow the surprise or residual anger to surface. Liam nodded slightly. "I'm here on behalf of Vanguard Group. I need access to the property to perform inspections and measurements. There are development plans underway." Emma's chest tightened. She had heard of Vanguard Group, a large development company with interests across Kent, but the personal connection made the confrontation sharper. "I'm aware," she said, "but the property is under my family. You cannot proceed without my authorization." He regarded her for a moment, unblinking. "That may be true, but the company holds certain rights, and my role is to ensure the project progresses. I'll need access, Emma, legally and practically." She stepped back, calculating. "Fine. You may inspect the property, but only under my supervision. I will not allow anything to be damaged, removed, or altered without my approval." "Understood." He nodded again, expression unreadable. "Understood." Over the next several hours, they moved through the property together. Liam measured windows, assessed walls, and inspected roofing structures. Emma recorded every detail, cross-referencing with her notes. Every question he asked, every note he made, she observed carefully. His professionalism was apparent, but she detected a lingering tension, a subtle unease, as if the past and present collided silently in their interactions. During a tense break near the barn, the silence between them broke. "You didn't just leave, Liam," Emma said, her voice dropping the professional mask. "You ghosted a life. Now you're back to measure the walls for your father's wrecking ball." Liam finally looked up from his blueprints, his jaw tight. "I'm here because if I didn't take this assignment, they would have sent someone who wouldn't even let you through the front gate. Don't confuse my presence with my preference. The project, it isn't fully my decision. The board, my father, they determine the next steps." Emma's jaw tightened. "Then you have no authority to override the property owner." "And that's me. Every measurement, every note, every action will be monitored. I will not allow destruction or removal of anything historically significant." He paused, considering her words. "Understood. I will cooperate. But you should know, Alder Creek is scheduled for development unless legal obstacles intervene. My role is to ensure the process adheres to corporate guidelines." They continued inspections. She showed him every room, every beam, every cracked floorboard. She walked him through the barn, the fields, broken fences, and potential access points. Liam noted measurements, angles, conditions, and timelines. Every question he asked, every calculation he made, Emma observed and corrected where necessary. The tension between them was quiet but palpable, rooted in professional duty and unresolved personal history. By late afternoon, they concluded the day's inspections. Emma locked the farmhouse doors, checked windows, and walked the perimeter one last time. Liam packed his equipment methodically. He looked at her before leaving. "Tomorrow, I'll return with my team. We need more detailed assessments." "I expect cooperation, Emma." She nodded, voice firm. "Cooperation does not mean surrender. Remember that." He paused, expression unreadable, then left in his car. Emma watched him go, then returned to the farmhouse. The wind had picked up, moving across the fields, rustling broken fences, carrying the faint smell of wet earth. She closed the doors and windows, reviewed her notes from the day, and planned the next steps. Contractor calls, material orders, and legal reviews would continue. Liam's presence complicated matters, but she resolved to maintain control, to protect Alder Creek, and to prevent corporate intervention from damaging what she had sworn to save. She would fight systematically, step by step, document by document, action by action. 2 days later, a black car appeared on the gravel driveway of Alder Creek. Emma noticed it from the farmhouse window while organizing repair materials in the kitchen. The car stopped abruptly near the main entrance. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, carrying a leather briefcase and a leather folder. His hair was streaked with gray, combed back, eyes sharp, assessing. Emma immediately recognized him. Arthur Sterling, CEO and chairman of Vanguard Group, father of Liam, the architect who had arrived 2 days prior. Her body stiffened. The stakes had risen. This was no longer merely inspections or corporate protocol. This was authority, power, pressure, intimidation. He walked across the yard deliberately, each step measured, surveying the farmhouse, the barn, and the fields. He stopped a few meters from Emma. "Emma Sterling," he said, voice controlled, deep, commanding. "I understand you have returned to Alder Creek." "Yes," she replied, steadying her tone. "I intend to restore the property and protect the family legacy. I am aware of the auction and the company's interest. I will not allow the destruction of Alder Creek." Arthur Sterling tilted his head slightly, eyes scanning her, evaluating. "Your determination is noted. Your father's debts are known. The company has invested considerable resources in planning. My son Liam is executing a project intended for significant development. You should understand that personal attachments do not override corporate objectives. Alder Creek is scheduled for acquisition unless legal issues prevent it." Emma met his gaze, firm. "The property is under my ownership. Until lawful transfer, nothing can proceed. Every action must have my authorization. Destruction, alteration, or removal of materials is prohibited without my consent." Arthur's lips pressed into a thin line. "Your resolve is admirable but naive. The board expects results. Your son's participation is incidental. Liam's loyalty to the company, and by extension to me, is expected. Resistance has consequences. Do you understand?" Emma's jaw tightened. "I understand. Alder Creek will not be compromised. You will not intimidate me into surrender. Every legal avenue will be pursued. Every action documented. Your threats hold no weight here without legal basis." He regarded her silently for several moments, expression unreadable. "Very well," he said finally. "But be aware, corporate influence extends beyond this village. Licenses, permits, approvals, any professional activity you undertake can be affected if cooperation is not achieved. I am warning you, not requesting." Emma's fingers tightened around the folder she had prepared, containing property deeds, mortgage details, and plans for restoration. "I am aware of your influence. I am also aware of my rights. Alder Creek will remain intact. You may leave your instructions with your son, but I am in control here." Arthur Sterling's eyes shifted briefly toward Liam, who had arrived silently behind him, holding technical drawings and measuring tools. Liam met his father's gaze, but did not speak. Arthur turned back to Emma. "Your cooperation with my son will determine the pace and legality of this project. Interference may have professional repercussions. My son's future at Vanguard depends on this property being cleared. His career, as well as your position in the community and professional practice, are connected. Consider this carefully." Emma's focus sharpened. She understood the dynamic immediately. Liam was bound by obligation. She was bound by legacy, and ownership. I will cooperate professionally where required, but Alder Creek remains protected. Your son will not override my authority. Arthur Sterling gave a slow nod. So be it. But note this, any delays, any obstacles, any legal claims you pursue will be scrutinized. The board expects compliance. Failure to adhere will result in consequences that extend beyond Alder Creek itself. This is your only warning. Without further word, he walked to his car, Liam following, and departed with precision, leaving Emma standing alone in the yard. She exhaled slowly, her mind already analyzing the implications. Arthur Sterling's arrival confirmed her fears. Resistance would not only involve corporate maneuvering, but also personal stakes for Liam, tying the son's professional loyalty to his father's objectives. Every move she made had to be calculated, every step documented, every legal safeguard checked. The farmhouse, the barn, the fields, every beam and board now existed within a battlefield of corporate pressure, personal history, and legal complexity. Emma returned inside, closed all doors, and immediately reviewed her documentation. She added notes on Arthur Sterling's warning, the potential leverage he might exercise, and implications for licenses, permits, and approvals. She mapped out a schedule for the next inspections, repairs, and legal consultations. Every contractor call, every material order, every minor repair could now carry additional risk. She outlined steps to maintain authority over Alder Creek while complying sufficiently to prevent escalation. Liam's cooperation would need careful management. His presence on the property, his knowledge of her plans, and his dual obligations to his father and to her now required strategic oversight. As dusk settled, Emma walked the fields once more, assessing fencing, pathways, and barns. The tension from Arthur Sterling's visit pressed on her mind, but her resolve did not waver. Alder Creek would not be surrendered. Every measurement, every repair, every legal document, every observation now carried higher stakes. She returned to the farmhouse, checked windows, locked doors, and prepared detailed notes for the following day. Contractor schedules, inspections with Liam, and careful documentation of any interactions with Vanguard representatives. Alder Creek had become both a home and a fortress. Emma understood fully. The battle for her family legacy had just escalated to a new, personal level. The morning after Arthur Sterling's visit, Liam returned to Alder Creek, this time with equipment, measurement tools, and documents detailing structural assessments. Emma met him at the farmhouse door. Her stance was firm, eyes alert, hands holding her folder tightly. Liam carried himself professionally, acknowledging her authority but maintaining his own purpose. He stepped onto the gravel yard, setting down his equipment carefully, noting the uneven surface, broken fences, and overgrown paths. Emma gestured toward the barn. We start with the barn doors, measurements first, then the beams. Any work beyond that requires my approval. Liam nodded. Understood. We can work systematically. Measurements, assessments, documentation. Then we can discuss potential solutions. They moved through the barn together. Emma measured the height of the doors, the width of the frames, and the condition of the supporting beams. She tested hinges, marked areas where wood had rotted, and listed sections for reinforcement. Liam followed her observations with notes, confirming calculations and drawing sketches. He occasionally asked questions about materials or structural choices, to which Emma responded clearly, maintaining control. After the barn, they walked through the farmhouse interior. Emma showed him every detail: cracked floors, peeling paint, broken window panes, warped door frames. Liam measured, recorded, and drew diagrams, careful not to interfere physically without permission. Emma explained historical details of the property, noting original construction methods and materials she intended to preserve. Liam listened attentively, occasionally glancing at her hands as they pointed out beams and frames, at her eyes as they scanned walls, as if noting her precision, determination, and authority over the property. In the afternoon, they moved to the fields and fencing. Emma noted collapsed sections, gaps, and weak posts. Liam measured the spaces, calculated materials required, and recorded estimates for repair. They worked methodically, every action recorded, every observation cross-checked. At moments, their hands brushed while handling measuring tapes or wooden boards. Each contact brief, functional, yet the air carried unspoken tension. Emma noticed it, controlled her reaction, focused on task execution. Liam seemed equally measured, observing her reactions, acknowledging authority while maintaining professional distance. By late afternoon, minor repairs began. Emma supervised contractors she had contacted the previous day, ensuring adherence to her specifications. Liam observed, occasionally offering technical advice, but always under her control. They replaced weak fence posts, reinforced barn beams temporarily, and cleared debris from pathways. Every nail driven, every plank set, every corner cleaned was documented in her folder. They spoke minimally about personal matters. When conversation arose, it was factual, task-oriented, and disciplined. As evening fell, Emma reviewed the day's work. Notes, photographs, measurements, calculations, and progress reports filled her folders. Liam packed his tools, checked diagrams, and prepared for departure. Before leaving, he spoke quietly, tone controlled but carrying subtle weight. "Tomorrow, I'll return with the next phase of measurements and structural analysis. Cooperation will make this process faster. Resistance will only slow both of us down." Emma's response was measured. "Cooperation is not surrender. Alder Creek remains under my authority. Every action will follow my approval. Any work outside those bounds is unacceptable." Liam nodded, expression neutral but eyes revealing the conflict of obligation. He left the property, walking to his car, leaving Emma alone in the farmhouse. She closed all doors and windows, walked the perimeter again, and noted every weak point, every area needing repair, every potential threat from external interference. She planned contractor schedules, prepared additional materials, and organized legal documents to reinforce ownership. Alder Creek had become a site of dual oversight. Emma's authority, Liam's measurements, corporate implications looming over every action. By nightfall, Emma sat at the farmhouse table, reviewing folders, diagrams, and contractor lists. She accounted for every nail, plank, beam, window, and door. She prepared for the next day, continued inspections, minor repairs, coordination with Liam, documentation of every interaction. Every decision carried weight. Every action could influence the outcome of the auction and the preservation of Alder Creek. Exhausted physically, mentally, and emotionally, she remained determined. The farmhouse, the barn, the fields, every board and beam would be restored under her control. Alder Creek would survive. She would not yield to corporate pressure, personal history, or external threats. The next morning, Emma entered the small attic room above the barn where old family records and storage boxes had been kept. Dust filled the air, particles floating in the sunlight streaming through a small window. She wore gloves, a mask, and carefully opened each box. Inside were ledgers, letters, photographs, and official documents spanning decades. She moved methodically, examining contents, cataloging items, noting dates and signatures. Among the papers, she discovered a folder marked with faded lettering. Alder Creek, Historical Records. Her heart rate increased slightly, though her face remained neutral. She carefully opened the folder and began reviewing the documents. There were letters from local authorities dating back to the early 1900s, blueprints of the farmhouse and barns, correspondence between local dignitaries, and several notarized records detailing meetings of historical significance. One document described Alder Creek as a meeting site for diplomats during a past regional conflict, a fact previously unknown to her. Emma paused, rereading the papers carefully, confirming dates, names, and signatures. She documented each page meticulously, photographing the originals and scanning them for digital backup. The inventory revealed a 1924 land use covenant specifically forbidding commercial redevelopment of the diplomatic site. This wasn't just history. It was a legal roadblock that could void Vanguard's zoning applications. She needed to plan carefully, as these documents could change the balance of power between her and the company. She organized the papers, labeling each folder and file, noting specific sections to highlight for legal authorities or historical societies. Liam arrived mid-afternoon for routine measurements. Emma met him outside the farmhouse, carrying a thick folder containing both restoration plans and now the newly discovered historical documents. She was deliberate in her presentation, showing him the barn structures, fencing, and field boundaries before moving inside. Once inside, She opened the folder to the historical papers, carefully pointing out key documents. Liam adjusted his notes, observing the documents. "This changes the situation," he said, tone measured, eyes scanning signatures, dates, and correspondence. Historical designation could legally block development or require significant modification of the project. Emma nodded, keeping her voice calm. "That is the objective. Alder Creek must be preserved in its entirety. This evidence gives us legal leverage." She paused, studying his reaction. Liam appeared conflicted. His professional duty to Vanguard Group and his personal connection to Alder Creek through her presence were now in direct tension. They spent hours reviewing the documents together. Emma explained the significance of each record, the potential legal avenues, and how the company might respond. Liam took careful notes, occasionally pointing out structural considerations that could affect legal compliance, but he did not act without her direction. Every interaction was measured. The air was heavy with focus and unspoken awareness. Both recognized that this discovery could either protect Alder Creek or create new conflicts depending on how it was used. By evening, Emma had compiled a complete dossier. Every original document had been cataloged, scanned, and photographed. She prepared a summary of historical significance for legal review, ensuring clarity and precision. Liam packed his measuring tools and diagrams, remaining silent on potential corporate consequences but attentive to her instructions. Before leaving, Liam said quietly, "Tomorrow, I'll continue structural assessments. Your documentation will be crucial if challenges arise. It's important we coordinate precisely." Emma closed the attic, locking the storage room. She walked the perimeter of the property one last time that day, inspecting fences, barn structures, and field boundaries. She planned the next day meticulously. Continued contractor oversight, preparation for legal submission, ongoing coordination with Liam, and safeguarding the historical documents. Alder Creek's preservation now had a tangible advantage, but the stakes had risen. The discovery had shifted the dynamic. Corporate pressure, personal history, and legal strategy now intersected at every decision. Emma felt a mixture of determination and caution. Every action would matter, every document counted, and every interaction could tip the balance between saving the farm or losing it. The following morning, Emma arrived at the farmhouse before sunrise. Fog clung to the fields, and the early light cast a muted glow over Alder Creek. She moved directly to the attic room where the historical documents were stored, expecting to continue her work. The door, however, was slightly ajar. Her heart skipped. She had locked it securely the previous night. Inside, the folders and scanned copies of the documents were gone. Only a faint outline on the dusty floor remained where the files had been. Emma's mind raced. She checked each corner, the windows, and the door frame for signs of forced entry. There were none. Whoever had taken the papers had done so deliberately and efficiently. She immediately thought of Liam. Her mind replayed the past interactions, his presence, the careful observation, the professional demeanor. She felt a surge of anger and betrayal. How could he violate her trust after everything? Emma confronted Liam the moment he stepped out of his car. The attic lock was bypassed, Liam. The 1924 covenant is gone. She didn't shout. The coldness in her voice was sharper. Liam didn't look away, but he didn't reach for his tools. My father's legal team was already filing a preemptive motion to seal all on-site records. I took them to a third-party notary in the village for immediate certification. If they stayed here, they'd be lost during the next corporate inspection. I took a risk to protect both you and the property, but I see now that I should have communicated. The documents are intact, verified, and ready to be returned. I will bring them back immediately under your supervision. Emma's jaw tightened, her anger tempered by careful calculation. She knew he had acted with some measure of logic, though his method had breached trust. She allowed herself a slow breath. You bring them back. Today. No delays. Every document, every folder, every scanned copy. You will not act independently again. Liam nodded. Agreed. I will deliver them and ensure proper handling. By afternoon, Liam returned with the historical documents, placed carefully in protective folders, and handed them to Emma. She inspected each one meticulously, confirming all originals and scanned copies were intact. Every signature, stamp, and notation was present. She organized them back into the attic storage, adding extra precautions. locks, reinforced folders, and a detailed log of the day's events. The incident had changed the dynamic between them. Emma remained cautious, her trust diminished, yet she recognized Liam's intentions were not malicious. He had acted within his understanding of corporate obligations, though clumsily. She made a mental note to monitor his actions closely, ensuring any further interventions were documented and authorized. That evening, Emma moved through the farmhouse with a different kind of precision. She wasn't just checking locks, she was verifying the digital paper trail. The certified copies of the 1924 covenant were already mirrored on 3 secure servers. The threat to her license was real, but Arthur had underestimated one thing. She had built her career on restoring ruins that others called lost. She wouldn't let him turn her life into one. She prepared for the following morning, coordinating with contractors, reviewing historical documents, and planning the next steps in defending her family legacy. The morning of the public hearing arrived with overcast skies. The town hall stood at the center of the square, brick facade weathered but imposing, wide steps leading up to heavy wooden doors. Emma arrived early, carrying folders containing the historical documents, legal filings, and detailed plans for Alder Creek's restoration. She entered the hall, noting the growing crowd of townspeople, local media, and corporate representatives from Vanguard Group. Chairs were arranged in rows. The air was tense, murmurs filling the space. She moved to the designated speaking area, carefully arranging her documents. Every page, every note, every photograph was organized and cross-referenced for immediate reference. Arthur Sterling arrived shortly after, entering with measured steps, briefcase in hand, his presence commanding attention. His expression was controlled, eyes scanning the crowd and settling on Emma. Liam followed silently, carrying technical drawings and structural reports, appearing professional but tense. He avoided direct eye contact with his father, focusing instead on the documents in his hands. The hearing began with procedural announcements, and Arthur Sterling took the floor first. He spoke with authority, outlining Vanguard Group's plans for a new development, emphasizing economic benefits, job creation, and regional growth. He projected data charts, schedules, and renderings of a proposed luxury golf resort. His tone was calm but persuasive, each statement measured, designed to impress both the public and the council. Emma rose when her turn came. She presented Alder Creek's historical significance, showing original documents, blueprints, photographs, and notarized letters. She explained in detail how the property had hosted diplomatic meetings decades prior and its architectural value. She emphasized the cultural importance of preservation, documenting every claim with clear, verified evidence. Her tone was confident, authoritative, and unwavering. The crowd listened intently, noting her methodical presentation and professional demeanor. As the council prepared to vote, Liam stood up from the Vanguard bench, moving not to the podium, but to Emma's side. He didn't use the corporate slides. Instead, he projected a structural overlay of the 1924 covenant boundaries. The original development plan is a breach of the standing land use restrictive covenants, he stated, his voice carrying through the silent hall. I have filed a formal dissent with the board. Either we pivot to a preservation-integrated model, or Vanguard faces a decade of litigation that will freeze this asset. My resignation is effective immediately if we proceed with the demolition. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Council members exchanged looks, clearly weighing the implications of Liam's proposal. Arthur Sterling's expression remained unreadable for a moment, then tightened subtly. He glanced at his son, then back at the council, as if calculating the next move. Emma stepped forward, voice steady, emphasizing legal and historical points, ensuring the council understood the documentation and potential consequences of ignoring preservation. She demonstrated a thorough understanding of building regulations, historical protection laws, and environmental considerations. Every response to questions from the council was precise, detailed, and unambiguous. By late afternoon, public sentiment had shifted. The council deliberated in private while Emma, Liam, and Arthur Sterling waited. The townspeople and press gathered outside discussed the proposed compromise, highlighting the integration of Alder Creek into a sustainable, historically respectful development. When the council returned, the decision was announced. Vanguard Group's original plan was rejected. The alternative proposal integrating Alder Creek as a central feature would be approved, contingent on structural and environmental compliance. Arthur Sterling's posture was rigid, a subtle acknowledgement of public and legal pressure. Liam's relief was visible but restrained. He had maintained professionalism while protecting Alder Creek. Emma exhaled slowly, her focus shifting immediately to next steps, coordinating contractors, ensuring compliance with council requirements, and securing Alder Creek's restoration. She glanced at Liam, noting the tension in his posture had eased slightly. Together, they began planning the practical implementation of the eco-resort and restoration, every detail accounted for: structural integrity, preservation, accessibility, and historical accuracy. As evening fell, Emma and Liam walked the property together. The farmhouse, barns, and surrounding fields remained intact. Every repaired fence, every reinforced beam, every cleared pathway reflected their combined efforts. The air was heavy with satisfaction, relief, and the quiet acknowledgement of shared purpose. Alder Creek had been preserved, its historical and familial significance intact, and a path towards sustainable development established. The sun rose over Alder Creek, casting warm light across the farmhouse, barns, and fields. Emma stepped onto the front porch, inhaling the crisp morning air, the smell of damp earth and fresh timber mixing with the faint aroma of wildflowers in the surrounding meadows. The property was quiet, serene, and intact. The battle for its preservation was over, yet the work of restoration and revitalization had just begun. Liam arrived shortly after, carrying a set of rolled architectural plans. He greeted Emma with a nod, a subtle acknowledgement of the trials they had faced together. The tension that had defined their interactions for weeks had softened, replaced by mutual respect and cautious camaraderie. "Morning," he said. "I've updated the plans to reflect the council's feedback and structural recommendations. Everything integrates Alder Creek fully into the eco-resort design." Emma examined the rolled plans, noting the careful attention to every beam, doorway, and historical feature. "These are thorough. It's clear you've considered both preservation and functionality." "I appreciate that, Liam." Her voice was steady, controlled, but carried a hint of relief and satisfaction. They moved through the farmhouse and barns, walking past repaired beams, freshly reinforced doorframes, and cleared pathways. Contractors had begun the initial phases of restoration, following detailed instructions laid out by Emma and Liam. Every task was documented, photographed, and logged to ensure compliance with historical preservation standards. As they approached the old stables, Emma paused, her eyes sweeping over the restored wooden beams and stone floors. "This place, it's no longer just a building. It's a symbol of what Alder Creek represents. Our history, our family, and now, a new beginning." Liam nodded, resting a hand briefly on a beam. "It's a foundation, literally and figuratively. Everything else builds from here. We did this together." There was a quiet weight in his voice, the acknowledgement of shared effort and restored trust. Emma smiled faintly, a mix of relief and quiet joy. "Together," she echoed. She stepped into the barn, running her hands over the polished wood, imagining the future visitors who would experience the history and charm of Alder Creek. Every repaired door, every restored window, every structural detail was a testament to resilience and determination. They walked back to the farmhouse porch, standing side by side. The surrounding fields stretched wide, the fences repaired, the barns solid and functional. The air carried the faint hum of nature, birdsong, and the distant murmur of workers preparing for the day's tasks. Emma felt a sense of completeness, a merging of past, present, and future. "I never thought we'd reach this point," Liam said quietly, his eyes scanning the property. "Not just saving the farm, but restoring it, giving it a future." Emma looked at him, her expression softening. It wasn't just about saving the farm. It was about reclaiming what was ours, what mattered. Alder Creek is more than a building. It's a legacy. And now, we get to shape the next chapter. For a long moment, they stood in silence, taking in the scene. The farmhouse bathed in morning light, the barns solid and restored, the fields stretching wide and green. Alder Creek was no longer a battleground. It was a home, a project, and a symbol of resilience. Past grievances, corporate pressures, and personal betrayals had given way to trust, collaboration, and shared purpose. Emma took a deep breath. We have a lot of work ahead, but it feels right. Every step from here forward is ours to take. Liam nodded, a rare smile breaking his composed demeanor. Then let's make it count. Alder Creek deserves nothing less. Together, they walked toward the stables, plans in hand, ready to begin the next phase. The farmhouse, the barns, the fields, all of Alder Creek, stood restored and protected. The past had been honored, the present secured, and the future awaiting their care. In that moment, the legacy of Alder Creek was no longer just preserved. It was alive, vibrant, and filled with possibility.